Hi, third grade, Detectives in Togas, Chapter 10, The Hole in the Wall. Let's get this chair ready. As Livia and the boys came back to the hall, Rompus, a handsome young man, came joyfully toward them with the words, "I bring good news, mistress." "Tell me," Livia asked eagerly, and it was evident from her expression that she was thinking of Rufus. "Our master has won a great victory," Rompus reported. "The latest edition of the newspaper was hung out just as I was crossing the forum. Our master has defeated the rebellious Gauls, and there is great rejoicing in the city." The boys were delighted, and the slave girls crowded around Livia, congratulating her. "Now everything will be well, mistress," one of them said. "Rufus will be released immediately," Mucius said happily. "Rufus released?" Rompus asked. In the excitement, no one had told him about Rufus's arrest. "I fear not," Livia said to Mucius, and he realized that she would rather have had news about Rufus than about her husband's victory. She started to say something more, then reconsidered and sent the slave girls out. Rompus alone was permitted to remain. She sat down, beckoned the boys to gather around her, and said in a low voice, "The emperor is jealous of my husband, who is adored by his troops. You know that the emperor insists on being worshipped as a god, and he will not stand for any rival gods. The prefect of the city is ambitious and is now more likely than ever to mete out harsh punishment to Rufus as a way of pleasing the emperor." The boys nodded intelligently. It was an honor to be told such political secrets, but there was a certain amount of risk in it too. It was extremely dangerous to make any slighting remarks about the emperor. Flavius looked anxiously around to make sure that no one was eavesdropping. Rompus could contain himself no longer. "What happened to Rufus, mistress?" he burst out. "Rufus is in prison," Livia said. "Rufus in prison? In prison?" Rompus paled. He breathed horrified. I said that wrong. Rompus paled. "In prison?" he breathed horrified. Livia told him what had happened. Then she asked sternly, "Where was Rufus last night? Why are his clothes soaking wet?" Rompus fell to his knees before her, stammering, "Oh, mistress, it's all my fault. I should have stopped the boy." "So he was out after all," Livia murmured. "Where did he go? How? When did he slip out?" Rompus looked penitently at his mistress. "Rufus had already left school last night when I went to fetch him," he said. "These young gentlemen told me that he had not felt well and had gone home." "We only said that because we didn't want to tell on Rufus, about Xanthopus, I mean," Flavius said. "I hurried home," Rompus continued, "but Rufus was not back yet. He arrived half an hour later." "Why did you fail to come and tell me?" Livia asked. "You were ill, mistress. There were strict orders not to disturb you," Rompus replied. "But why did he come home so late?" Livia asked. "He would not explain, mistress," Rompus said. "He looked very downcast, did not answer my questions, and went straight to his room. I was worried by his behavior and watched him through an opening in the curtain. I wondered why he did not take off his cloak, for his supper was standing ready for him. He took tinder and flint and lit his lantern. When he did so, I noticed that it was not his own." "It was mine," Mucius put in. "Then he emptied his money box," Rompus continued, pouring the money into a small bag. "It occurred to me that he intended to run away, but I did not stop him immediately because I was curious to see how he would go about it. I decided if it would be useful to learn his tricks, and so I hid myself. That was a piece of stupidity on my part. I should never have let him out of his room. He came out and sneaked through the hall into the garden. I followed close behind. In the garden, he raced across the lawn toward the boxwood hedge, jumped over it, and suddenly disappeared. At that, I began to worry. I ran after him, but it was already too late. I was alarmed to find a hole in the wall that we never knew anything about because it was overgrown with ivy on the outside and concealed by a hedge on the inside. The hole was too small for me to squeeze through. All I could do was stick my head through and shout after him, "Stop, stop, Rufus, come back at once." But he paid no attention to me and continued into the woods. I had to run all the way through the house to the entrance and have Titus open the door for me. I lost so much time that Rufus was out of sight before I started after him. I searched for hours but could not find him anywhere. "When did he return?" Livia asked. "He was gone all night," Rumpus replied guiltily. "All night?" the boys and Livia exclaimed in one breath. "He only returned home this morning shortly after sunrise," Rumpus said. "Where had he been?" Livia asked anxiously. "He refused to tell me," Rumpus replied. "He looked utterly worn out and was no longer wearing his cloak and had not brought back his money or his lantern. What worried me most of all was that he was soaked to the skin. I insisted on his telling me where he had been, but he refused to even speak. Finally, I threatened to go to you, mistress, whereupon he came very excited, grasping my arms, and cried out, 'If you do, my father will be lost.'" What in the world did that mean? What in the world did he mean by that? Livia asked. "That I do not know, mistress," Rumpus replied, but his despair seemed so genuine that I believed him. "You must not betray me," he pleaded. Nobody must know where I've been, not even my mother. It would bring misfortune upon us all." He begged so hard that finally I gave my word not to tell. "If only I had guessed these dreadful consequences, mistress, I certainly would have gone to you. Perhaps we would have been able to save him. I could have helped him to escape in time. We could have gone to the country together and hidden." Rumpus fell silent. He sat and stared woefully into space. "It is too late for that now," Livia said. "I ought to be angry with you for neglecting your duty, but you acted in good faith. We must all work together now to help Rufus." "But how many riddles are there? Above all, I can't see how my husband can be involved in this thing. If only we could find out where Rufus was last night." "We could visit Rufus in prison and ask him," Antonius proposed. Rumpus shook his head gloomily. "We would not be admitted," he said. "Besides, prisoners are strictly forbidden to talk." "He must have been hiding out in Minerva Square," Publius said. "It would take him all night to write Caius as a dumbbell on the wall." "Wait, it wouldn't take him all night to write Caius as a dumbbell on the wall," Julius objected. And how do the lost cloak, the wet clothes, and the money fit in?" Mucius pondered. "Maybe he used the money to buy red paint," Flavius suggested. "Bosh," Mucius said. "After sundown, there's no shop open in all of Rome. Something tells me that Rufus fell in with evil companions last night." Livia remarked thoughtfully, "There is no other explanation for his behavior and for his staying away so long. Somebody forced him to write Caius as a dumbbell on the sacred temple, perhaps with the intention of blackmailing my husband. Perhaps there are other political motives behind this business. If we had some proof that Rufus was forced to do it, the prefect would have to release him. We must try to find his blackmailer, or whatever he is. It seems to me that the man into whose hands Rufus fell must be the same person as the man who assaulted the teacher Xanthos," Rumpus said. "These two incidents in a single night, there must be some connection. If only there were some way to find this scoundrel," Livia murmured. "But we haven't the slightest clue to go by." "The chain!" Antonius suddenly shouted. "What chain?" Mucius asked. "The chain you have in your pocket. It belongs to the burglar, doesn't it?" "Oh, that," Mucius murmured. He took the chain out of his pocket. Livia and Rumpus examined it curiously. "A valuable chain," Rumpus said. High Oriental officers wear such chains on their cloaks. Perhaps the robber is a Persian general," Antonius said thoughtfully. "More likely it was stolen from the cloak of a Persian general," Publius suggested. "I'm afraid this chain is not much help," Livia said. I have an idea, Mucius exclaimed. What is it? The other boys asked. Lukos, Mucius said. His voice lowered into almost a whisper. Lukos? Yes, Mucius said. He had second sight after all. He has second sight after all. Let's go to him, show him the chain, and have him say who it belongs to. Antonius was overwhelmed. Will that be exciting? Livia also thought the idea good. This Lukos is supposed to really have second sight, she commented. I've heard the most highly placed people say so. But Julius, Publius, and Flavius maintained an embarrassed silence. Are you scared of him? Mucius challenged. Go on, Publius mumbled. Why should I be scared? Julius said, scratching himself behind the ear. I'm not scared either, Flavius hastily put in. Wonder if they really are scared. See you tomorrow.